you want to have them introduce themselves first so you know, because we have one person who's substituting.
Yeah, why don't you two introduce yourself?
Okay, well, I'm Clayton Jones. I'm the candidate for district court judge. I've been a defense attorney for 13 years, working in the public defender's office. For the last 2.5 years, I've been a prosecutor. So I've had the balance on both sides where I feel that I'll have the proper knowledge of the law, temperament, patience, and respect for all people to be your next district court judge. Currently in the DA's office, I handle violent crimes, be it robberies, homicide, robberies, and then I also handle high-level drug cases. In the public defender's office, I did the same thing. I just defended them on the same level. So that's why I'm asking to be your next district court judge. I'm trying to keep it brief so I don't take up too much time.
So I'm Wendy Lindenberg. I've been an assistant public defender for 9 years. I work with Clayton in our office. I'm still in the Durham office. That's all about me. Judge Hill was a private attorney for 25 years. He practiced he did criminal defense and civil work, and then he became a judge in 2002. He was elected to the district court bench. He ran for re-election unopposed in 2006, 2010, and 2014. This is the first time he's faced an opponent on the bench. He is the only sitting district court judge that has any significant civil experience. And in district court, we have criminal, which encompasses regular criminal, domestic violence, and traffic charges. We also have in the civil field, we have child support, we have family court, child custody, divorces, things like that, and then abuse, neglect, and dependency court. Also as part of criminals juvenile court. So Judge Hill had experience in all of those areas before he became a judge.
Okay, our first question. What issues influenced your decision to run for district court?
Because since I'm the candidate, I'll start first. What influenced me, I do believe all judges the starting block should be knowledge of the law. But there's 3 other areas that I believe all judges should have. There's temperament, patience, and respect for all people. Now, I've worked in Durham County for the past 15 years. I can't say my opponent has not had any opposition, but for 15 years I just saw things that just didn't sit right with me. I didn't like seeing young people come to the courtroom call my babies. I actually remember a case because I actually worked. I used to be one of the first youth drug treatment court attorneys in the public defender's office. And I remember this was probably like 2005, because unfortunately our legislators cut the funding for it. But it was a great program. If you had young people who had like marijuana issues or drug issues, you actually had a drug treatment court for our young people, but funding was cut. But I remember it was like 2005, 2006, and it was a young man who was there, and he picked up a charge as an adult. He was 16, but he was in youth drug treatment court when he started at 14. And he was brought over from the jail, shackled, and I remember my opponent telling him, well, this is what happens when you don't listen to what I told you in court. And that broke that young man. I mean, he was a big guy. He went to Southern High School, and the charge was ultimately dismissed, but he always remembered that. And I always said, well, I didn't think that treatment was right. And then for years, I've seen different versions of that. So I decided, well, I can be 2 versions. I can either be part of the problem or part of the solution. So I decided, well, with my experience I have now, because that was like 3 years as a young attorney. You called him green then. But now we're talking about 12 years later. I've had numerous trials. I've prosecuted, defended, and I feel like I have the experience at this point that I am qualified to be your next district court judge. So that's why I filed in June, and come November 6th, I'm hoping to become the next district court judge.
Judge Hill is just running for re-election. He's been on the bench 16 years, unopposed until this year. He does call young folks his babies. I think mostly in juvenile court, because I have not seen it in adult court. He does, another thing Clayton brought up at the last table is he does ask young people who come in the courtroom, where do you go to school, and what do you have first period, what do you have second period, how are you doing in your classes? And so he's 68 years old. He's of a different generation from us. He's of a different generation from you. That's his way of showing that he cares. I don't find it to be disrespectful whatsoever. I think he's asking them how they're doing. He's trying to find out what's going on in their lives and why they're standing in front of them. And he does care about the young folks. But he is a very good judge, and I think he will be I think he should win re-election, and I hope that everyone will vote for him.
Thank you. So our next question. So we know that rehabilitation is a big goal of the juvenile court system. So here in Durham, do you think that the system is effective at rehabilitating youth for life after?
Currently, no. It's not properly utilized here. I think it's a catchphrase people like to use now, like, well, I'm progressive, I'm liberal, we're going to rehabilitate. But when you look at the sentencing, it's harsh. Is to send people to jail, or if you send people to jail and say, okay, well, I do STAR and STAR grad, and that's our drug treatment programs in the jail, that's okay. But it's my position, if we really want to genuinely talk about rehabilitation, that's never going to be resolved inside the four walls of the courthouse. You have to be actively involved in the community to know what the issues are, to explore all the resources that are provided, so you can deal with the issue before it comes into the courtroom. I think it's good to say, well, and it sounds good to say, well, I would help with diversionary programs and once you're in the system. Well, how are you linked within the community to resolve the issues before the person gets there? And that's what you never hear. Well, I don't hear very few of the judges talking about, judges, or any other candidates talking about. But on my record, I can say I'm in the communities, because right now I work with a program with Love and Respect, where we work with former gang members, those who are coming home, transitioning from prison back into the community. And the things I hear all the time, well, you telling me not to go back to the life of crime, but what resources are you offering me? And people always say, well, look, how can I get a job with my criminal record? Well, you know how we do those things? Not in the courthouse. If I'm involved in the community, I get to know this person. So I don't know you by judging your criminal record. I get to know your character. And then I can say, well, you know what? Obviously, I'm linked to resources that someone who just got out of prison may not have. But if I call and say, hey, I know person X, they made a mistake, but they're employable, they have these skills, or that, most likely that person will give them a second or third chance. Telling someone, well, go to the Criminal Justice Resource Center or doing all this other stuff in the courtroom is not going to resolve the issue. And that's why I think it's one of the key difference between where I'm coming from versus what is the norm for our judiciary.
So I think it is working. Our juvenile rehabilitation is working, because I only handle adult cases. I've never once handled a juvenile case. You're not supposed to know if your client has a juvenile record, but guess what? You always find out if they do. And I would say out of the tens of thousands of cases I've handled, maybe 10% of my clients have had a juvenile record. So something's working, because only 10% of the kids coming out of juvenile then continue on to adult court. So something in the juvenile system is working. There is a juvenile court counselor, there are probation officers. This is all my understanding. They have a team that work with the youth and try to get them back on track. And I do think it's working. Mm-hmm.
How would you address juvenile delinquency?
The core issue is home and family. I think it's home and family life that how you have to address it. We can't wait until it comes to the court to resolve it. I know there are truancy court programs. I know my opponent say what he does, Carrington and Northern. I've been doing Shepherd Middle School since I've been the public defense officer in 2005. It's a great program in theory, but the truancy issue is already, once it becomes an issue and with the schools, and then it's a referral to the court, and hopefully you can kind of resolve it in the school system before truancy or delinquency petition is filed. But all of these issues have to be resolved, like I said, for the last answer, before it gets there. And that's why I think you being actively involved with the school, so you get to know the students, know what their issues are. Because right now it's just school resource officers, and then it becomes an issue, then it's referred to the court system, and then next thing you know is a petition filed. But if you get to know the child, the children, or whoever comes to school, you get to know them, you will know what the issues are, and then you can hopefully put resources to the issues to resolve them before they come to be a delinquency issue.
And so we recently raised the age. Starting December 1st, 2019, if you're 18 or younger, you are now considered juvenile. You will go to juvenile court. And so 17 and 18-year-olds have been in adult court for the last, forever in North Carolina. So how many 17 and 18-year-olds are charged with crime? A lot. So they're going to go into our juvenile court system. So we're going to need a lot more juvenile court counselors, a lot more probation officers, a lot more resources put into the juvenile court system. And so that's obviously got to be a big piece of it, because there's going to be a lot more kids going into the system. But like I said to the last question, I think it's working. I think there are good resources to rehabilitate the kids that are involved in the juvenile court system, and now we're going to be grabbing a bigger population and bringing them in, and so hopefully we're able to reach all of them, get to all of them, so that they don't end up in adult.
What are your opinions on? Well, that's basically answered. What are your opinions on raising the age for 18 to 18 for trying youth as adults in North Carolina?
I think it's a good step, but I think the thing that's not discussed, there's a missing prong. Not all cases raising the age will automatically stay in juvenile court. Really, it caps at class H, I believe. So if you have a youth who commits a robbery, which is a high level, that will go to adult court. So it needs to be expanded more. And I think more level of discretion should be heard in those cases to determine whether they should stay in juvenile court versus going to adult court, because there are more resources in juvenile court than there are in adult court. Now, I kind of disagree on one part. That number of recidivism is higher than 10%. That's why I don't think the issue is working of those who are in the system, where we have to look at, well, we're raising the age, so we need to provide more resources to juvenile, hire more probation officers and all that. That's when you're limiting your goals to funding, and then you're going to be strapped by the General Assembly. What can be done is work outside of the courthouse to be involved in the community, so you can prevent one of our young people from even coming to the system. And I always find it interesting how when people are running for office, they catch everything. They're actively involved in the community. But once you get the seat that you desire, you don't see these individuals in the community anymore. It cannot stop. You have to continually be involved in the community, because one of my goals would be to have an empty courtroom. I mean, we're doing something right. We can't focus on, well, once you're in the courtroom, we're going to do all of this stuff. So, just to conclude the answer, I'm a proponent of raising the age, but we need to do more, because we cannot continue to have our young people tarnished with these criminal records.
So raising the age was the best thing that North Carolina could have done. We needed to do it 20 years ago. The DA has the discretion to take the case from juvenile court to superior court, so they can leave every case in juvenile court if they want to, or they could reduce the charge or whatever. It's the DA's discretion. So that will be a big thing that you'll see, because we've now gotten a new district attorney in Durham. So we'll see what they decide to do. Fast forward a year from now when the age is actually raised. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing that we finally did in this state.
I don't know how much time we have, but to you, what are the most important qualities that go into being a good judge?
Temperament and patience, because you're going to have to listen to all parties and make sure you have the level of patience and respect for all people, because knowledge of the law should just be the starting block. The other two qualities is a must that you must have. I think a lot of judges overlook them because they're in a position of power.
Know the law, follow the law. Most important things. I'm an attorney. That's my favorite thing about a judge. You know, if they know the law and they follow the law. Judge Hill had one of my very first trials. The state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that every element of the crime was committed, and that the person sitting next to you was the person who did it. And if they didn't do that, you cannot find them guilty. That's the burden of proof. And so Judge Hill, my very first trial I won, he said, I think he did it, but the state didn't prove it to me. And that's important, because that's where you follow the law. If the state doesn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt, you cannot find that person guilty. I've had judges believe my client was guilty and find them guilty, and that's not the law. So as an attorney, the most important thing is knowing the law and following the law. And Judge Hill has been doing this for 42 years, so he's beyond experienced.
I think that's what we differ on, knowing the law, following the law, but the comment, well, I think he did it. it's a comment not necessary. And I think that's how we differ on our approach on how it's a generational thing. So, but I would say again, these are the best questions I've had. I've been to a lot of forums, and I'm keep saying that over. A lot of forums, way more forums than I probably wanted to go to. I went to one Saturday that I was like, we all knew the questions were going to be asked. I think if you all could have been the ghostwriters for the questions, it would have been a lot better. So these are the best questions I've had. It actually requires some thought and insight, and it definitely reflected the issues. So I think you should commend yourself for, one, being involved and the thought that you gave to these questions, because it's great. I'm actually happy to be here. I'll tell you that. I've been to some. I'm like, I'm ready to go home.
What got y'all interested in doing this?
What got us interested?
What
in
got
doing
you
this?
interested in doing this?
Well, I've been working and helping out with kids voting for a while now, and I just find it really interesting as somebody who wants to maybe go into politics and law later
Okay,
on.
great.
And I like kind of learning how the system works.
That's
It
great.
interests me being able to interact with candidates
That's
for
very good.
different things.
And what year are you?
I'm in 10th grade.
Okay.
Very good. That's cool.
Unrelated to campaign, my thing is whatever it is that you want to do, go for it. and with that, don't tell everybody what you want to do. Only your close circle. Because the quickest way to have a dream slash is telling too many people. You always have Sally doubters. Oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Whatever it is that you decide you want to do, go for it. And go for it with all guns blazing.
That's what I tell my 6-year-old. He's over there, and I'm sure that's what he tells his
Yeah,
8-year-old.
tell them, go for it. So I always tell her, tell Daddy we're going to make it happen. But yeah, go for it. Yeah. So.
I think we're going to turn it.